Hey guys, some people have been asking what's been going on in Japan as far as COVID is concerned at the moment, asked for an update. So here it is, we're going to talk about COVID, we're going to talk about suicides. There's two depressing subjects, and then maybe a bit of a lighter subject about masks at the end, and also a nice background for you to enjoy. So yeah, what's happening with COVID? Okay, so here's some statistics to start off with. Population of Japan, 127 million people. Number of people PCR tested until now, 1.5 million people have been PCR tested. Total people infected, total number of people infected, 76,000. Total number discharged, so sent home, 67,754. And total deaths to date is 1,460. So, as we've mentioned before, obviously that's tragic, and if one person loses their life, it's tragic. So if 1,460 people lose their lives, it's a terrible, terrible thing, of course. However, we also recognise that compared to some other countries, Japan is doing rather well. However, sadly, this week they also released another statistic, and they said that in August, 2,000 people suicided, which was up a certain percentage from last year. However, sadly, averaged over a year. That's pretty standard for Japan, because they average about 25 to 30,000 suicides a year. So it probably was different this year because people's years have changed. Usually March, April is a bad time for suicides in Japan because people have stress because of new working year and new school year starting. So some people have a lot of stress at that time of year, but it does average to about 2,000 people a month or more all year round, which is terrible, isn't it? So again, comparing those statistics to COVID, 1,460 people have died from COVID so far in the whole year, and 2,000 people killed themselves in August. So again, we're often struck, no matter how people die, it's always sad, isn't it? But we're often struck by the amount of attention that's rightly given to COVID. We're not saying it shouldn't be, but it's interesting that all that attention that's given to COVID, it's a shame it wasn't the same amount of attention isn't given to suicides and car accidents, because again, this year more people have died in car accidents in Japan than have died from COVID, and we've shown you lots of the reasons why. People driving around talking on the phone, and kids not being supervised properly going to and from school, and truck drivers driving like crazy people, and all those things that don't seem to get much attention at all. And the same as the suicides. There's some talk about suicide things, that suicide prevention and suicide awareness and that sort of thing, but it's not, mental health care isn't something, we've talked about this lots of times before. In Japan it really is like 70 years behind the rest of the world as far as mental health care is concerned. And it's just a shame, we look at what can be done in Japan, and they've been pretty effective. Society in general has been pretty effective in Japan at reacting to the COVID thing. It's just a shame that the same attention isn't given to, road safety and suicide, really. Because if they did that, they could save lots of more lives, couldn't they? Which is just a shame they don't. So we'll get to a lighter subject in a minute, but just a couple of things. I always like to mention this. Those of you whose incomes are pretty much the same as they were before COVID, who are still doing okay, we'd encourage you again, anything you can do to help a small business. If you can go to a small cafe or a small bakery or any sort of small business and spend some money, whether that be takeaway or ordering online or going in and sitting in there and doing it, if you can, we'd encourage you to do that. Because as small business operators ourselves, we know what it's like to be suffering and being wanting to do more work. That's our situation at the moment, wanting to do more work but just not being able to, and it's extremely frustrating. Our corkboard's growing with bills and wanting to do more work. So there'd be a lot of other small business people in the same sort of situation at the moment. So anything you can do to help those guys would be really, really good. Go and spend some money there, buy a cup of coffee from them, buy a cake from them, eat some lunch there, and get some benefit from that yourself, and also help them out as well. Would be a great thing to do. Encourage you to do that. Just as far as we're concerned, those of you who support us on Patreon. We've lost a few patrons who are having hard times themselves. We've had some other patrons who are going through hard times who've reduced their pledges, and the end result is that our patronage has dropped off as well. So if you're on Patreon already and step up your support, we'd really appreciate it. And if you're not on Patreon and you can support us on Patreon, if you like what we do as far as our videos and our photos and things that we do, if you want us to continue doing what we're doing, anything you can do to help us would be really, really appreciated. Again, the corkboard, we've got a corkboard, those of you who don't know, we've got a corkboard that we put our bills on, and the last few months, the last 6 months, it's been a matter of every time we get a little bit of money is pick which bill on the corkboard's the most urgent and pay that. And we're sort of losing the battle of the corkboard a bit. It's getting a bit busy on there. Lots of clips, lots of pins pinning the bills all over the place. So anything you can do to help us on there would be great. Just the last one, the mask thing. Some of these things you might recognise from where you guys are living, but the funny mask stuff that we're seeing, you know, people walking around with their masks on and talking with their masks and all the rest of it is what we're used to, isn't it? But it's the funny stuff, you know. We're seeing, getting a lot of this sort of photo to talk to us, sound too much hard to understand people talking with the masks on, but we're also seeing a lot of that. A lot of mouth breathers, you know, that cover their mouth but not their nose. So we've seen a lot of that on the internet too, so we know you guys are seeing that where you live as well. And we're seeing a lot of this, people standing around with it here, or down here, the neck scrotum down here, we're seeing a lot of that. So you guys have probably seen all that. But have you seen this one? Have you seen this one? We see people driving around in the car here all the time with this one. So they've got back in the car from somewhere and they just leave it there. And they just leave it there and they drive around in the car and they do their things, or sometimes walking around too. And then obviously when they get where they're going, they put it back on again. But you know, having tried it to see what it was like, it's really annoying having a thing hanging off your ear. And we see it, when I started this video and started talking to you guys, someone drove past doing it, right? We see it all the time, all the time. And that'd be those people we talked about, the 66% of Japanese people. Those who missed that statistic, 30% of Japanese people wear a mask from when they leave the house to when they come home. That drives me crazy, that does. 30% wear the mask from when they leave the house to when they get home. 66% wear the mask when they're around other people, and 4% never wear a mask. So somewhere in that 66% must be these people. I'd love to know what percentage of people do that, because we see them all the time when we're driving along. They'll drive past us or pull up next to us at the traffic lights with the thing hanging off their ear. It's a really irritating thing to do, and then once you know how irritating it is, it's sort of irritating to see it. 2020 is a strange time to be living, isn't it? It really is. Anyway, that was the update. You got to keep laughing, haven't you? Life goes on, doesn't it? No matter all the tragedies and the sad things, all we can do is make what efforts we can to lessen it all, but life goes on, doesn't it? It's annoying. Beautiful, isn't it? Just leave you with this for another minute. More videos coming soon.